Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Eggs. Today we have a very awesome episode, one I've actually kind of been looking forward to for the past couple weeks. We have a friend of mine, Ian Foster, and a new friend of mine, Scott Foster, who I just met, and there is no relation. Actually, they're both Fosters, but they're not brothers, and they play in this group called Foster Brothers. Go figure, right? So thanks for joining us, and let's introduce our guests, Ian and Scott. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. Thanks
Hey
for
guys,
having
yeah,
us,
welcome
Mike.
to the show.
Yeah. So Ian and I have a history. We kind of grew up together in the same area, Gig Harbor, Washington area. We both went to high school and church and fun stuff when we were kids. And after we graduated, we kind of went our separate ways. And somehow in that traveling or whatever, Ian ended up in Nome, Alaska, and ran into this guy Scott. And you want to give us a little history of how you got there and how you guys met?
Yeah, I was working in Eastern Utah. I was working in mining, and I had a buddy that knew Scott, and Scott was also in mining, but he was doing underwater gold dredging, and I was working in gilsonite, so totally different.
So what's gilsonite?
It's a black rock. It's found only near Bernal, Utah.
Okay.
And they use it in like paint products.
So you had an interest in mining before you ended up in Nome.
Well, I had an interest in the money that mining could
Okay. All right.
could bring me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but up until I got to know him, I'd never gold panned or anything like that. Anyway, I met Scott. He was playing a show, and so finally, our mutual friend introduced us. Scott told me about what he was doing, and it was awesome. Yeah, I mean, he's diving in the Bering Sea for gold. When you say that out loud, diving in the Bering Sea for gold. I mean, who doesn't want to get into that?
So, what got you into diving? I guess, Scott.
Well, my first exposure to gold panning is when I was like 10 years old.
Oh, so way back.
Yeah, my dad and we used to canoe and do these long float trips down wild and scenic rivers in Alaska. That's where I grew up.
Okay, so you're from Nome.
Yeah, I'm not from Nome. I'm just from Alaska. So,
okay.
I grew up in Wasilla. That's where Sarah Palin's from.
Oh, yeah.
She's the one who put Wasilla on the map. if you've ever been there,
so have you met her?
Yeah, I
know it's a small town. I'm sure you know her. Like you call her up and say, "Hey, what's up?"
I actually have a letter of commendation from Sarah Palin.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Nice. So my first job, I was a river rafting guide.
Okay.
And out in the middle of nowhere on the side of the river, I found a guy's wallet who'd obviously been floating / fishing the river prior to us. And for whatever reason, his wallet ended up on the side of the river. So I found it, and it had about $600 in it.
Oh.
I was like a 17-year-old kid.
Like, yes, score.
But it also had his fishing license and his Oregon State driver's license in it.
Okay.
So it was funny because we had all these clients on our trip, and every guy had an idea of what should be done with his wallet. Some were like, "You're never going to find the dude. Let's just split the money." And some are just like, "You found it. You keep the money." And in my head, I was like, his phone number is on his driver's license.
Yeah. So it's not like you're never going to find the guy.
And he had an out-of-state license, which means he got a non-resident fishing license, and the date of issuance was on the license. He got it like a week ago.
So he's around.
He's around. So when I got off it was a week-long float trip, but when I got off the trip, I called him up and I was like, "Dude, I got your wallet here." And he's like, "Holy."
Yeah.
He's like, "You can have all the money that's in it." He's like, "Money doesn't mean anything to me. I just don't want to have to stand in line at the
DMV.
Blanket DMV."
That right there's for $600.
He's like,
money threshold.
He's like, "Keep all the money that's in it. Use the money to pay for the shipping." And my mom's like, "There's no way you're keeping that money."
Yeah, right.
And I was like, I really didn't want to keep it. Something didn't seem right about it. I don't know if it was my overly developed sense of heroism. I was just like, "No, the hero can't keep the money. You got to be the Boy Scout that always refuses the money."
No, I'm good.
So anyway, push came to shove. He got his wallet and his money back. And he was so touched by that he wrote a letter to the editor of our local paper, The Frontiersman. And Sarah Palin, who was mayor at that time, read the article in The Frontiersman, and she just of her own free will reached out and sent me a nice letter of commendation.
That's amazing. Well,
Yeah, that's awesome. Congrats.
So we just took up 10 minutes talking about things
no,
that
totally
have
fine.
nothing to do with
Well,
gold mining.
That's a cool story, and that's part of
Well, we've
podcasting.
established your character, though.
Yeah.
That's the most important.
We can
part,
also
right?
hashtag Sarah Palin. So that might be.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well,
And know anybody else famous?
So that's I was into running rivers. I was a river rafting guide, and my dad and I were canoeing rivers all over Alaska, and so that's how I got into gold panning, and just because we did it for fun. But as soon as I saw gold, and I was just like, you can pull money out of the earth. I mean, think of how you get all the things that we do to get money, you know, and then even then money's not actually worth anything. It's just paper.
yeah,
Right. And if it's digital money, which didn't really exist back then, but even so, it's still not actually worth anything. All it is we've ascribed value for it to represent some dude's time.
yeah,
Right.
really,
But the gold, whether some dude works for it or not, it's just sitting there and it has value. It doesn't take anything else. It has inherent value. And that to me was just so resonant. I was like, so you're telling me by my own work, and I don't need anybody else, I can get this value and now it's mine. And that was so appealing. And so push came to shove. My best friend Caleb and I, when we were 13 years old, we started learning how to weld so that we could learn how to build our own gold mining equipment because the crap's expensive and
right.
we didn't have any money other than the permanent fund dividend checks that we got. That's what they give you in Alaska.
Isn't it like $1,000 a year or something
It's
for
about
just
Depends on
living
the
there?
year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's how it all started. I remember when we were 14, we weren't even old enough to drive. Our parents would drop us off by a bridge out in the middle of the wilderness, and we would stay there for a week.
it's so awesome.
And we'd have guns for bear protection and for stranger danger, and we'd sit there and blow shit up and dredge for gold.
That's amazing.
That's what we did, you know.
So, what took you to Nome?
So I'd heard about gold dredging up in Nome, but I didn't know that it was out in the ocean. Like I'd heard about there being lots of gold there. I remember as a kid, I'd heard stories from bush pilots who flew up there, and they talked about when they had tore up the old boardwalk on Front Street.
Oh, just all the gold that fell through, probably.
Gold coins, gold nuggets, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, that had fallen out of people's pockets, you know, drunks and gamblers and everything. And so there was always an allure about Nome, but it wasn't until Caleb and I, we must have been 22 years old or something. We had built a dredge and we sold it to some guys who were going up to Nome to go investigate some property that was for sale, which oddly enough, they were going to investigate Bluff.
Oh, really?
Alaska.
Where it's at right now? Okay. So we haven't covered this yet, but you guys were actually on the show Bering Sea Gold. You were in the first season. Ian and you both built the Sluicy, that's what it's called, right? The Sluicy.
that's correct.
On the show.
So on the very first episode, you were on the first season or second season?
I was on the first season, and season like 2.5. It was under the ice, so I dove under the ice, and that was like a separate portion of it.
Yeah.
It was like third season, I think, though.
So continue now that we cleared that up.
So these guys, they wanted to go, and the Bluff was for sale, which oddly enough, it was for sale by a guy named Randy Smith, who we are dear friends with. He's one of our best friends. He's like a 65-year-old man. But
he's become a second father and a mentor to us. He's traveled all over the world, consulting with mining and diamonds and stuff. Really solid dude.
So we didn't know him yet, but he had these claims out at the Bluff, which is a very kind of a mystical place in Alaska mining.
Well, if you're watching the show and you're current on it, you know what the Bluff is.
Right.
All you got to do is look at the last season and you can see what's going on right now.
Yeah. So the Bluff was for sale in 2003. And we had we had our little 5-inch dredge that we built for sale. And these guys wanted to buy it. And so I ended up working. And so I was working in a boat building shop, but my best friend, Caleb, he got flown up to Nome with the dredge to meet these guys so that he could show them how to put it together. And then they were going to pay him to operate it. They just wanted to do some sampling out on this claim that was for sale so they could see if it was worth buying.
Even worth the time. Yeah.
Right. Well, they get up there and they find out the Bluff is like 60 miles east of Nome out through
in the middle of nowhere,
grizzly bear
Yeah.
infested
Yeah.
wilderness.
Well, and mining out of Nome is intense in and of itself. And you have a harbor, you have a store, you have restaurants, but Nome is difficult.
Yeah.
There's a
But
gas
60
station,
miles-
let alone
but
60 miles away.
east, yeah, with no
Yeah.
cell reception and technology at that time in 2003, it's very different than what it was now.
Yes.
So these guys discovered there's no way we're getting this dredge out there. So they never even made it, but they flew Caleb up there. So he's got to spend a week paid
In Nome.
in Nome. And what does he do? He goes to the beach and he sees these guys dredging out in the ocean. And we'd been suction dredging for years by this time.
But in the river.
In rivers. We'd never even conceived of doing it in the ocean. And these guys are out there doing it. And I remember he called me. I remember this call. He's like, dude, they're dredging in the ocean. I was like, are they standing in the beach in waders? He's like, they're diving in the ocean. And I was like, how does their dredge not sink? He's like, they put it on a bigger floating platform. And I was like, are they making any money? And he's like, I watched this guy clean out his sluice box after a day of dredging. And I was like, well, what did you see? Granted, at this point, we had been doing this for years. We had never actually cumulatively found an ounce of gold.
Really?
Yeah. We were finding little flakes and nuggets at a time. I remember at one point we had
And you had invested like 5 G's in your dredge and you hadn't even
Yeah.
made a third of it back.
not quite that much. We literally built our sluice boxes out of old snowmobiles. We'd cut the tunnel out of a snowmobile, flip it upside down, put some expanded metal grating and some carpet in there. You got a sluice box.
That's insanity.
Yeah, you can go to the junkyard, get it for free. Like we did everything on the cheap, right? But he tells me, he's like, I've never seen so much gold in my life. He's like, there had to have been 30 or 40 ounces in
Well,
the
you look
sluice
at
box.
Okay, so the difference between like your dredge and Mr. Gold's dredge, if you haven't seen the show, go watch it. He's got a full-on excavator on a barge, and they're building this big, huge one that they're gonna, the massive one, to take
We've
out to the
seen it.
bluff. Is it insanity?
Yeah, we've seen it. It's I mean, not to trash talk too much, but it's all, in my opinion, it's all for show value.
Oh, really? Just to add to the content of the show.
It's a massive flexing of the testicles.
Oh,
is
okay.
what it is.
All right. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
But
So push come to shove, he saw how much gold you could get out of the ocean, and he was like, I mean, 30 ounces in a day, I would have been happy with like 30 ounces in a year, or half of that at the time, And at this time, gold was only worth like $300 or $400 an ounce, but still, that was like a $10,000 a day back then.
Yeah.
I mean, most people on this earth will not argue about $10,000 in a day. So so Nome all of a sudden became this thing, and it took us a while to get there. I mean, we built this dredge that we were going to take up there in 2004, and right before its construction was complete, the shop we were building it in caught fire and burned the whole thing to the ground. We both lost our life savings in that. That was pretty devastating.
how do you recover from something like that? Just go back to the junkyard and start from square one?
It's a long story, but at that point we just kind of put gold dredging on the back burner, and then Caleb got married and a bunch of other things. So that just, and we're still great friends to this day, but that was kind of the end of our joint gold mining initiative. But push came to shove. One of my best friends, Dylan, his grandpa had heard about what I was trying to do, and he's like kind of a doomsday
Prepper guy,
kind of guy, and so all these guys want gold, like everybody wants their hands on gold. So he funded an operation for us to go up there.
And it was at the Sluicy?
No, that was it was a dredge that they named the Blue Betty, and it was built by Robert Dahlke in Sunnyside, Washington. And Dylan and I we spent a month in Washington helping Dahlke finish building the dredge because he was so overloaded with work.
Wow.
I mean, it was like the rush before the rush, but just with the price of gold escalating. I mean, for most of my young adult life, gold was like $300 or $400 an ounce, and then all of a sudden, over the course of a couple of years, it had jumped up to like $600-700 an ounce.
Pretty much doubled in value.
So and everyone just thought it would keep going up. So by 2008, we got this operation going up there, and I mean, it was a steep curve, but we still managed to pull like 60 ounces. It was our first year.
Wow.
That's amazing for any first year operation to pull that kind of gold.
That's crazy. I guess it comes back to the experience you had in the river and getting everything kind of dialed in as a kid.
Yeah,
go
well,
from there.
and honestly, it wasn't just me. It was the fact that I went and surrounded myself with mentors who had been doing it their whole career up there. Like this guy Yano, he actually passed away this last year. Jan Kralik, everyone called him Yano. He's like a hero.
He's
to
a
me.
godfather of dredging and gnome,
Wow.
but he's a solid dude. He's one of those guys that he would. You'd ask him a question about what you're doing, and sometimes when you're a younger guy trying to figure stuff out, you tell the older guys like how it's going to be done, you know. And
when really
and
should
some
be
of the
other
older
way
guys
around.
will just slap you, you know. They'll be like, "No, that's not how it's done." But some of them, they'll say, "Okay, well, I'll look forward to hearing how it goes," you know,
and then just walk away and let you experience it.
yeah.
and
And if
watch
you're
you
smart,
spiral
younger,
in your demise.
yeah. And if you're a smart younger guy, you listen to that tone and you listen to that phrasing, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. If you didn't say that's going to work, then maybe I should reevaluate. You know? And so he would be like that. He was a very wise mentor. But
so Jano was a Slovakian, born and raised in Slovakia, communist Russia.
Wow.
Or communist Soviet Union. And he was playing soccer on the Slovakian national team. And they went to a tournament in Austria and he escaped.
Oh, really?
To a refugee camp. And then he made his way, he got a ticket to New York City, and he basically like starved and worked and like hoboed his way across the nation. He'd always read Jack London books as a kid.
So that's what took him to Alaska.
And
I wonder how many people have gone to Alaska because of Jack London. Probably.
Well, I wonder how many people have gone to Alaska because of Bering Sea Gold too.
Probably. Well, that to me, okay. So the last season, I was watching a little bit of it. And since they started talking about the bluff and Mr. Gold went out there and kind of had them kind of do their thing, you look at the last. I know, right?
It's just laughable.
It's hard for me to keep a straight face
when I say that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. What's his actual name? What's his actual name?
Sean
Pomeranke.
Pomeranke. Okay.
No one in Nome has ever heard him called Mr. Gold.
Just because
they've
of the show.
Heard himself call himself Mr. Gold.
It's just the show itself.
It's the show thing.
It's pure it's just bastardization.
Well, anyways, looking back at the last season, you see people camping on the beach up there and just pulling their dredges out up there. And it went from like no one to like, it looked like the whole beach was just covered of people camping. And it's probably directly related to the show, people coming up there because of that.
No, absolutely. We met some people that had never come up to Nome before, never minded Nome, and their plan was bluff. And we've been up there for years, and we have connections. We know the people that own the bluff. So we had tremendous amount of infrastructure and experience lined up. And even then, it's a daunting task.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had people getting off the plane, buying a boat, and motoring out there. It was a cluster.
I can't even imagine.
It was completely irresponsible.
Well, just looking at the guys from Hawaii, I can't remember their names either. The three brothers or the two brothers and the crazy dad. Zero experience flying in from Hawaii. Here we go. Let's be miners. And I mean, that's a little bit beyond me. I wouldn't go up there and do that, but sure thing.
Well, bless their heart. I mean, on one side, it's like, you know, jumping in. I've always jumped into deep water and just learned how to swim. You know? So I respect that. And you got to have dreams and stuff. So I'm not criticizing that. Down at the bluff, though, but expecting the other people to save you when you just don't plan accordingly. Yeah. That's the issue down the bluff, because it's very serious down there.
So let's switch topics here a little bit. Let's switch to Ian. You went to college for psychology, and you went up there and you were working in.
So naturally, I went to work in an underground mine because you can't make money in psychology.
Right.
It's a pretty logical next step, really.
Yeah.
But you've had
the greater metaphor was
that's right.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You went up there to kind of you didn't initially go up there for mining. You went up there for I'm just blanking the word. What were you doing?
So I actually did. I met this guy.
Chicks. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So our mutual friend Thane, who I grew up with, Thane was born in Alaska. I was driving through Utah, just passing through, and had set up a show at the home of some really wealthy friends. This beautiful, $5 million house. And I did a concert there, and Thane brought Ian to this concert. Now, It sounds like Thane had told Ian about me at one point, and Ian's like, I want to meet this guy. So Thane brought him to the concert. And then Ian pulled me aside and basically was like, I want to work for you.
Okay.
And I was like, sounds good. I mean, I already got a full crew. I I got more guys than I know what to do with, actually. It's, you know, internal issues with the partnership I was in at the time. But push came to shove. Ian was telling me about himself, and he said that he was going to do some filming in Africa. And immediately I was like, ding, ding, ding. I was like, filming. So I had wanted to generate some sort of show concept out of this for years. And so when he said, yeah, and I was like, you got a camera? He's like, yeah. Can you film underwater? And he's like, yeah.
Although I've never done it before. I didn't even have a housing that could do it. Like now we have like waterproof cameras, you know, they're like dime a dozen, you know, GoPros and
yeah,
stuff.
I got that. No problem.
Yeah, but at the time, like it was actually kind of a process to get my HD camera in a housing and
figuring it out.
But I didn't know this. But he was basically, he was bullshitting me, but not with the intention to bullshit, but with the intention of like, I will say yes to whatever answer I have to that leads to the outcome of me ending up in Alaska. It's like, so if what it's going to take is having an underwater HD camera, then I will make sure that I have the ability to film HD underwater. You know, like that was his attitude.
Yeah, I was tremendously motivated to make it happen, and I was trying to, as coolly as possible, give him as much information to let him know, like, I'm a guy that'll figure it out.
Yeah,
you know?
I remember distinctly one of the phrases he said was, he's like, I know you don't know me, but I am willing to subject my body to whatever degree of discomfort, freezing, pain, whatever it takes to get this done.
That's awesome.
And immediately I was like, this motherfucker. I was like, this is a guy. Okay.
Yeah, let's do this.
I like this guy. this is my kind of guy.
Yeah.
So, okay. So he came up.
How was the first season you were there? I mean,
well, the first season, he mentioned some of the problems that he had with his business partners. They didn't see eye to eye. So very quickly, when I got on the ground, and we also had bad weather, right? Initially, the first month, we only had maybe 2 dive days, and it's all dependent on Mother Nature.
Yeah.
So we got up there. We're like 8 dudes. There are way too many people in the operation.
Yeah, I was originally like, it was my operation, and I had an investor who was basically a silent investor, and he was funding it.
Is that the guy that funded the dredge down in Oregon or Washington?
No, or yeah, the dredge that was built in Washington. Yeah, it was built in Washington. Yeah, it was. Yeah, his guy's name is Al Brown. He's not a bad guy. He's just what happened was, so Al was funding this. Well, he has a son, and Al's, you know, Al's got to be like 80 something years old now, but at the time he's like 70 something years old, and he's got a son who's like, you know, 55, 60. And the son had been partners with him on just about everything business-wise they'd ever done. So the son didn't like seeing his old man partnering up with this young 20-something on a gold mining operation in the wilderness, and him not being a part of it. So he immediately he wanted in. And the son's an alcoholic. And he's a nice guy. Like, he's got a good heart, but he's an alcoholic. And he gets up there and he basically just wants to live off of his dad's money and drink every night and get a little gold on the side.
I mean, it's a good gig if you can get it, I suppose.
Yeah. But what it turned into is he doesn't like me calling his old man from time to time saying, your son's drunk all the time.
Yeah.
And he can only spend like 2 hours underwater because he's an old ass drunk dude. Like, this work we do is serious.
Yeah.
And it's seriously hard. And you got to be in primo physical shape to spend more than 4 or 5 hours at a time doing it.
Underwater.
But if you want to make any money, you gotta be willing to spend 6, 8, 10 hours underwater.
And that was one of the main frustrations initially. So there's all sorts of that's the summary of not seeing eye to eye. There were all sorts of issues. Scott was partnerships with what ended up being a whole family of people that wanted to be a part of the business. and that's a difficult dynamic. I came up and I had the longest dive of that season. It was like 7.5 hours.
Wow.
And I also saw other people that weren't nearly as serious about treating their bodies right and putting everybody in a position to put as many hours on the nozzle as possible.
Yeah.
Getting hours. And I could have gone longer, you know, but I had to share hours. So very quickly I saw I wasn't going to make money in that. And within a month, I was looking for a different job. I also knew I didn't know enough about the gold game to jump in at that point. I hadn't been able to observe. I hadn't been able to be a part of it. I wasn't ready to get my own operation at that point. And plus I was broke by that point too.
Yeah.
I mean, about 2 months into it and I was pretty broke. So
Well, when you're relying on the income from the gold and you're splitting it 8 ways, it doesn't go as far, I'm sure.
Right. And
Absolutely.
usually you basically, it doesn't really matter how many people are in the operation. You get paid based off of what you find.
Oh, really?
But the thing is, there are only so many.
Do you clean the box after each shift?
Well, what you do is you just keep track of all the hours.
Okay.
And then you total everything up.
Okay.
And then you just divide it by hours.
Yeah.
There's
There's a tremendous amount of trust and just like the dynamic of just relationships. You have to manage your relationships so well in the gold mining operation, because some days, Scott is a testament to this in our, our operations later on. Like some days he's a very strong diver, but some days he would get the first shift and then the weather would kick up. And so he would have 6-10 hours more dive time than everybody else. And it wasn't necessarily because, he's as strong of a diver as he is.
The weather was allowing.
It's a weather thing.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden we had to have a conversation within the operation. Well, how are we going to make that, equitable?
Yeah. Sometimes like I'll forego my shift so that somebody else can get
some hours,
an equal number of hours.
Yeah.
But what happens is I'm trying to manage an operation here, and I'm up in Alaska, like boots on the ground, right? I'm in the trenches. And then this 60-year-old drunk is calling his old man saying, "Hey, I need more of my friends up here.
Oh, we
need more guys." So, and this young buck, he's just spending your money on frivolity. He's ripping you off. Right.
Awesome.
And then all of a sudden there's like 8 guys up. It's a 2-man operation. And all of a sudden there's 8 guys up here that all think they're going to go home with a bunch of gold in their pocket. And they're working the banker's hours just while it's light.
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden I'm like supposed to be the leader of this operation. The old man quits. So I send him the gold. He sells the gold, puts money in my bank account. And that's what I'm supposed to use to pay the operations.
So do you just FedEx like 30 ounces of gold down to Oregon, or how does that work?
Yeah.
Make sure you get insured.
He was actually, at the time he was in Idaho, but yeah.
We don't like broadcast that on social media. Like,
sorry,
here I am at the post office.
Well, and now they have gold buyers in Nome, but at the time they didn't. So yeah, I would literally just mail him the gold, and then he would sell it, deposit some of the money in my account so that I could handle the expenses. But his son had done such a good job of basically backstabbing me and making me look like I'm this villainous, nefarious, kid who's trying to rip his old man off, that we lost trust, and he quit confiding in me. He quit sending me the money. And if I don't have the money to pay the bills, I'm no longer the leader of the operation.
Right.
So now I'm just a guy who's diving for free.
So what ended up happening in the end?
I had to walk away from it.
You walked away from it, and you head back to Utah or stay up there? And
actually, that's when I moved to Utah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had to take a year off. Well, a year or 2 off, and just kind of rethink how I was going to do things. So in that time, Ian got himself a state job.
I stayed up in Nome. I liked Nome a lot.
Yeah.
And I was broke, and I was supposed to go to grad school in the fall for more jobs, more schooling that doesn't pay anything.
Right.
And I like the town. I mean, Nome's a very unique town. If you want to rewind the clock 100 years and see what that was like, Nome is the
place
closest place to do that. And I mean, we have all the modern conveniences, and the internet's just a little bit slower, but yeah, I mean, the town, the way things work, just the non-monetary currency that's exchanged just through trust and goodwill is amazing up there.
Pat my back, you'll pat yours, kind of thing.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, I mean, I've now worked in the muck of what's going on behind the scenes and some of the darker elements of Nome. But that being said, I love Nome.
Yeah.
And I just knew, you feel in your heart sometimes, this is a place I want to explore. It's a place that just kind of, it harmonizes with what I was trying to accomplish at that time.
Anacortes, Washington was that for me. It was just my kind of place. And I want to get up to Alaska some point just to see it, because I've never been up there. I've heard amazing things.
Nome is a frontier community.
Yeah.
Right. It's right on the edge of the wilderness. People don't drift there. Like Nome is like, it's a filter, and it's difficult to get there. So if you end up in Nome, you've got a story, And now, oddly enough, the largest employer in Nome is actually the hospital.
Really?
Yeah, which is owned by a native corporation. So now it's slowly turned from a frontier community of dream chasers, and pioneer mentality, and now it's kind of turning into this bureaucratic.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, the state government says if you've got people here and you've got kids here, then they need a school. So you build a school. Well, if you got a school, now you got to have teachers. Well, the teachers bring their families. Well, now you've got families and teachers, and now you've got to have a hospital. So now you build a hospital. Now you've got to have doctors. And then, but what it's turned into is, it used to be mining, fishing, and subsistence are what economically supported the community. Now what supports the community is subsidies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody that works there is ultimately an extension of some form of bureaucracy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So let's talk a little bit about we've covered the Gnome and the Bering Sea Gold show. I'm sure we could talk about it for hours, but we're kind of on a little bit of a deadline.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. Just go.
Oh, just go. Okay.
Yep, just go.
So how was it being on this show? How did that affect your day to day? And, was it a good experience, or was it just kind of like, I'm over it?
It's taken time for both of us to feel really grateful and good about it.
Yeah.
And we've learned a lot. And some of those lessons that you learn that you're grateful for are lessons in like how the world actually works, and different, I guess, thicker skins that, we all have to develop.
Yeah.
And so that's some of that. I'm absolutely grateful that I was on it. I mean, maybe Scott can just answer for himself, but I'm absolutely grateful I was on it. It took a lot of years though, just because of how it went down and what happened between season 1 and season 2 and what happened after that. And also just the way main, like, big business television, not just the channel that we were associated with, but you see a lot of the stories that are coming to light out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
How big bureaucratic television organizations treat people.
Sure.
And so understanding that now, knowing what I know now, I still would have done it all over again. Yeah.
I remember the first time I watched Deadliest Catch.
Yeah.
The crab fishing show. And I was actually living in Florida at the time. And I was in a hotel with a group of guys. We were doing Hurricane Katrina cleanup. And so a group of guys from the community drove across from Florida over to, I think we were actually in Pascagoula, Mississippi. And we, at one point, I think we stayed in maybe Mobile, Alabama. But I remember watching that show and I was like, this is so amazing. It's so real. Like, I grew up in Alaska. I knew people that worked on fishing boats, and I was like, this is and I didn't, at the time that I first saw that show, I mean, this was like 2005, 2006, something like that. So I'm like, a reality show. I didn't really understand what that was, but I was like, this is so real. It was so cool. And so once I got into gold mining a few years later up in Nome, I remember thinking, this would make such a great reality show. And so the main tipping point as to why I hired Ian
was to try and get
that out there. And so he brought his camera and of his own. I mean, he was like a wind-up toy that winds itself. Like he brought his camera. He got all the underwater footage. He ended up making this awesome little 11-minute YouTube documentary that he published to YouTube. He mailed the link with a little.
I remember researching it in my off time. Like I had started a master's degree, a distance master's, and I was working 50, 60 hours a week for the state, and trying to stay in a reasonable health and researching how to actually pitch a show to a network.
Yeah, right.
Because I'd put videos together, but I never pitched a show.
Yeah.
And now that I know what I know about the whole industry, I mean, what I was trying to do was crazy. I'm so glad I didn't know what I was actually trying to do.
Right.
Because I wouldn't have done it.
The naive.
It was such a David and Goliath.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being naive to stuff like that, though, sometimes is good because it gets you going, and then you kind of develop as you go. I've jumped into deep water before and had to kind of, figure out how to swim in the process, and that's probably a similar experience. So, is that video still on YouTube? Do you still?
So I used music that wasn't mine.
Oh, and they pulled it down.
Yeah, they pulled it down.
Yeah,
in the background.
Well, it was a great video, and once Bering Sea Gold actually happened, that video got all kinds of attention.
Really?
Like I actually had a whole bunch of.
That's probably why it got flagged. Was because of that.
More than likely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember he and I were talking back and forth. I was down here in Utah playing music, and he's up in Alaska, like pitching this show. and simultaneously trying to build his own dredge. And so,
oh yeah, I was trying to build the boat because I was quitting regardless of the show or not.
Even
like
if
I was
the
quitting
show
my
didn't
state
happen.
job, I was gonna go gold
Go
mining.
gold mining.
My own operation. And it was crazy, like that whole process. So I'm talking with Scott periodically, and we know that there's at least one other production company working on the idea. When I actually sent the show in, though, like it was really important that it didn't just get thrown to the side, like because they get so many pitches,
Yeah,
you know, throughout the day, throughout the year. And so at the day before I sent it in, I put some gold on top of it. I put some gold in a Ziploc baggie. And
just to catch their attention.
Yeah. I paper clipped it to the top of the pitch. So the first thing that they did when they opened up the envelope is they saw a little bit of gold dust there.
That's pretty cool,
nice.
actually.
Yeah. It's one of those last minute improvisational things.
Well, we've worked with a guy who was an A&R rep for a recording label, and we interviewed him. And he would get these elaborate packages with CDs because he was the first step in the approval process to actually move on and have a band get signed, kind of thing. And I think if he got an envelope full of gold, he might have. Yeah.
So it worked out, but the pace was tremendous. I mean, a week after I sent it in, I got my first phone call from one of the entities that I'd sent it into, and then
so do you think
a week after that, I was actually in front of a camera? Were you there at that initial?
Well, yeah. What happened was, I remember that week so well. You're like, all right, dude, here's the link. Tell me what you think. And I watched it and I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
You know, it's not how I would have done it, but if I'd have done it, it wouldn't have been as good.
Right.
So I just remember thinking, this is great. And he sent it out to a few different like production companies, and some companies were just like, meh. And then it seems like you sent it maybe even like to Animal Planet or something like that. And they're like, no, we don't accept submissions.
Yeah, I sent it to Discovery International, Nat Geo, MTV.
MTV of all places.
I said Golden Guitars because we play music
there
too,
you go.
right? So all of a sudden we're going to create this show about whatever.
Well, who knows? You know,
yeah,
weirder things have happened, right?
Yeah, the bullshitting continues. So, but then I sent it to 8 Ball or 3 Ball. They did Flying Wild Alaska.
Okay.
And then I sent it to Original Productions, which did Deadliest Catch, Ice for Truckers, you know,
all
X-Men, all those guys. And then I sent it to another guy that like David Lyon. He runs like a production, or it's like a preparation company for pitches. So it's like a production company for pitches specifically. Anyway, he was the first guy that called me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
was
was
like,
an amazing call.
You're gonna need to raise like $50,000. If you give me like 50 grand, I might be able to make this thing.
No, that's
pitchable.
what he said, man. And I was like, oh, I'll think about it. But I got off the phone on cloud 9 because I honestly, like, I just got some Chinese
someone replied.
Food. I was like working 60 hours at a very, very difficult job, and then trying to get all this other stuff done on the side. And I just got off the phone with a professional that had called me.
Yeah,
like what I had done or what we had done. He called me.
Yeah,
you know, and that's what I got out of that. Was like, you called me, dude.
Yeah,
like my idea.
Well, and do you think you kind of spawned the idea and then they just ran with it without keeping you in the?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, almost definitely. We weren't the first ones to think of doing this. There was another guy up there who had been working with Animal Planet. Well, he'd been working with a production company that had connections to Animal Planet. They were trying to make a show. And then Original Productions contacts him and Discovery contacts him. And then somewhere in there, Original and Discovery, because they work almost exclusively with each other.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, they're like, hey, we got a package from this guy in Nome. You did? We did too. Somebody's got to call this guy in Nome. So he gets a call from like both companies. And then like a day later, I get a call from the guy who was in charge of doing the casting, like finding who's going to be the talent on this show. And he's like, dude, can we fly you? I was in Utah.
Yeah. And
so I get the call from this guy. He's like, can we fly you up to Nome for a day just so we can do a casting interview? I was like, sure. So, and I was singing. I had a full-time singing gig at a ski resort in Deer Valley, the Montage.
Oh yeah.
Nice. It's in its first year of being open. I was one of the first. I was in the group of guys that were the first, musicians to perform there. And so I called the booking manager and I was like, hey, sorry, I'm going to be gone for like 2 or 3 days, but can you find somebody to cover for me? Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. I fly up to Nome, I do an interview and I leave.
Wow.
It moved so fast. And
the pace was tremendous. Like I was reaching out to lawyers and agents, and I had like 3 agents fall through, and because they send you paperwork that's daunting.
Yeah.
I mean, the paperwork they send you, it uses phrases like in perpetuity throughout the universe.
Oh,
That's,
really?
That's in the contracts you sign when you get involved in television.
Wow.
Including acts of God.
Yeah.
That sounds like my contract. So
no, it was crazy. So I was just trying, I was in very deep water. We were both of us, just trying to swim.
I remember the energy. We were so excited.
Yeah.
Like we thought this is going to be cool because we get to share with the world what we're doing. And it's a great story, and everybody's going to love it. But we also thought that we were a part, like this in our head, in our minds, this was our baby.
yeah.
We thought that everybody wanted to jump on board
With you.
with us. And what actually
the other way
happened,
around, they're bringing you into their thing.
we're like, hey, we're building this little rowboat. Isn't this fun? Do you guys want to get in the boat with us? And meanwhile, they're constructing like
you're in
an
their
armada.
pool.
Yeah.
They're constructing an armada,
Yeah.
and they're like, you can be a barnacle on the hull of this ship if you want to sail with us.
Yeah.
But we have plenty of other barnacles. We don't actually need you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, so all in all, Bering Sea Gold was positive, and it kind of
It was
Yeah,
a huge
much-
source of stress, and
Yeah.
and for me, I played my cards wrong. It turned into like basically financial ruin.
really.
After the first season, here's what the game plan looked like: is the captains will make X salary with the show as
On top of their
talent
actual
fee.
gold.
Yeah, because nobody touches your gold.
Yeah.
It's not reality if the show is like subsidizing a mining operation and then taking a profit.
Well, and
They don't
frankly, the
want
gold numbers aren't reality anyway.
Yeah. Oh,
Like-
really?
Like mine were for season 1, and I know Zeke's were, but the rest of them, I don't know of any of them that are accurate.
So like
So,
those big
spoiler.
old huge piles of.
Spoiler.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. But
yeah, so it was like if you're the owner of an operation, then the show is gonna pay you X in the form of a talent fee, and if you're a deckhand on an operation, and you're a significant part of the show, then you'll have some fraction of X in the form of a talent fee at best, and at worst, it's if your captain wants to share some of his talent fee with you, he can, but he's not obligated to.
okay.
So there are a lot of guys on the show who aren't getting paid anything.
Other than the gold take.
Right.
Which
as
is-
far as
They're just getting their
yeah, but
job.
that's
Yeah.
not related to the show.
Yeah.
You know, as far as like getting a check or in getting some share of the profit that comes from being on reality television, some of the guys aren't getting paid anything. And what these reality production companies and networks are hoping for is that they can find people who are so attracted to the prospect of being famous and being seen and feeling important.
And that probably happens all the
will-
time.
Yeah,
No, it
that will
does.
be
It does.
more
Like half of
value
their-
than
yeah.
their
Yeah, I was
than
gonna
their
say-
talent fee.
Yeah, I
will.
was gonna say that's the worst part because those people are everywhere. And
Yeah.
so, although I wonder if the bridge might be a little further to cross to come and do like a mining operation versus go live in a house and be on camera or something. I
Yeah.
feel like there might be a range. It might be harder to find guys to work in Alaska, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, so what happened with the show is it created a gold rush
Yeah.
for Nome. And so we were there at the beginning of just an organic gold rush.
Yeah.
And I guess it was somewhere in the middle.
Well,
But
yeah,
when-
I was part of a gold rush just because the price of gold was going up.
Mhm.
And when the price of gold goes up, places that are not really worth mining all of a sudden start to
Be worth
become
it.
worth mining, And I wanted to do it even when gold was at rock bottom. I wanted to do it just because I liked mining.
Yeah.
And I thought I could make money at it, but I was like, if I can make like $500 a week, which is about what I could make at any lame job at that time, like I could make that much pounding a hammer or welding or doing whatever. Like 500 a week is not hard to make. And I
Yeah.
just thought if I can find like an ounce a week or whatever, I would rather make my money that way than doing it for somebody else.
Yeah.
So that's where my head was at. I wasn't even thinking of getting rich. I was just trying to find a day job that I enjoyed.
I like it. I do the same thing.
yeah.
So,
Well,
Go
let's transition a little bit into the music side of things,
Yeah.
and how that all worked. I mean, as you
Mhm.
said before, when we tried to segue out and got back into it, we could talk about this forever. Like this
Yeah.
is super interesting, but I don't
Yeah.
want to give short shrift to what else you guys have going on. got a new single coming out, the Christmas song. So we thought it would be great to try and wedge that in here real quick before the holiday.
Right before.
No, thank you. So we had a lot of downtime in a 6-month summer. And so I'm going backward to go forward. So
No worries. No, keep it going.
in a 6-month season, you only have 50 dive days. And so that's, 130 days you're doing something else. You have to maintain your equipment. You have to eat. You have to shower sometimes. But anyway, point is you have a lot of downtime. And so that first summer when I went up to work with Scott, we lived in a tent. It was a big World War II Army tent. And then later we lived in a cabin for about 3 summers after that. So we spent about 4 summers on the beach. Scott spent 5. He spent a summer longer than I did. But just living on the beach and listening to the waves crash at night and waking up in the morning, just listening to what the sounds were and planning our day accordingly. If we heard calm, we would get up real quick and get out on the water and go dive. And if we heard the weather was, when it was windy and wavy and stuff, we just practice music.
And this was before the invention of the smartphone.
So you could
you couldn't just sit there and scroll through
and plus,
funny cat videos.
The Tinder population is there's like 8 girls on Tinder. And no, so
you've been through them 100 times.
Nope, still left.
So you play music on your downtime.
Yeah,
and he knew I was a musician because we met at one of my shows, and he brought a guitar with him, but I didn't really know to what degree he was into music. But then he started showing some of the songs that he had written, and it was clear, it was like, this guy's a writer.
Yeah.
He's kind of a DIY musician, but he's a legit writer. And I was kind of the flip-flop of that. I was a DIY writer. That's something, do it yourself, or I was trying to figure out how to do it, but I never really took any classes in it. I never considered myself a writer, but I could come up with licks and music all day long.
So you're the musician and he's the lyrical content for the most part.
Right. And I don't mean to completely downplay my writing abilities because, every artist, an artist is an artist, right? And you just kind of learn how to manifest yourself through one medium or another. But you like, I think any artist can become a writer, so, and any writer can become a musician if you're willing to just kind of put your axe to the grind.
Put the time in.
Yeah. We've interviewed a couple lead singers of bands, and I always go back to like their lyrical content because to be in that role, actually writing for the songs is, to me, daunting. Like actually come up with this is what I want to say. This is getting my thoughts out there to the world. That right there in and of itself, an art. And being able to do it eloquently is art. Props.
What I noticed about Ian's writing too right away is my music was always very poetic and abstract, and it was about using words to create these, almost like modern artistic, scenes. I was creating scenery with my words. Ian had humanity. Like he had a firm grasp on humanity, and he was putting that, like he was telling stories that resonate with people based off of their experiences.
Well, one of your songs, remind me of the title as I go and describe it, is talking about your lineage and where you
further along.
Do you want to tell the story behind that song? We don't have it recorded yet, but go ahead and just talk about it.
Yeah. Did you want to say something? You good? Yeah, I was in the middle of a bunch of different things, but I was in Johannesburg. And because of the show, somebody reached out to me and wanted a presentation given in Germany. And that's where I'm from. That's where all my people are from, Germany and Poland, that area. So he reaches out. So I'm in Johannesburg preparing to give a lecture on the American dream in Germany.
Yeah.
But Johannesburg in South Africa.
And this is your first time going to Germany, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I'd had a couple of layovers, but I never left the airport. So yeah, I'm preparing. I'm in a hostel in South Africa preparing for this presentation, and I've got all of my genealogical charts in front of me. And so I'm looking at, all the different names and all the dates, and I don't know all their stories. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm an imaginative person. So I'm just imagining all these different people and all the choices that they had to make, because I see all the different places that they went to. They landed in New York, and then they made their way to Wisconsin. And then my dad ended up making his way to Denver, Colorado. And then he moved to California, which is where I was born. We moved up to Washington, which is the gateway to Alaska, as everybody knows. And then I went up to Alaska. Now I'm in Johannesburg. preparing to go back to Germany, talk to people about the journey. You know?
Yeah.
And so I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility, and it was just a very, I treated it very seriously, and I was looking at, you know, the full circle of my path to that place. And it was a really emotional moment. And I started just kind of working on a chord progression that I'd had in my mind for a while, or a picking pattern more. And then I just started, you know, writing the song, you know, no turning back now, couldn't if I knew how, the only thing I see is a road in front of me. In the dust that's settling behind, there's nothing back there that I can't find in a better form, way out west. That's the American dream. It's not about accomplishing or riches or anything. It's about the journey and about the possibilities. That's what, you know, all my study. But the second verse talks about where I'm from. It's 200 years or more. Grandfather saw the shore. I'd love to see it through his eyes. What's he looking for?
Yeah.
And we've been having fun, but like I get emotional thinking about that because it's just a very special moment. And
well, especially the next line where he says, "Did you know he was sending ripples through time? I get a feeling his eyes were a lot like mine."
That's pretty cool.
Driven, not shiftless, knowing that there's got to be more to life than all this. Axe to the grindstone, more than just a bag of bones. And it says his great grandson is still headed out into the unknown.
That's so cool.
2 years later,
It's cool.
He's on the same, or 200 years later, he's on the same journey that his great grandfather was.
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, and those initial choices that, you know, our ancestors made, most of us were immigrants. You know, we go far enough back. All of us are. But you look at those initial choices, life in Europe was not fun for our ancestors that made that choice. I mean, they were just,
there's a reason they left.
To the grindstone. Yeah.
So we're running a little low on time, but we have had an opportunity to record you guys here in this studio, the very room we're sitting in, for a kind of a spoof on a Christmas song that I actually really like. It kind of sums up my whole ideology of Christmas and how much I hate it. But so
no, well, and it's a total transition.
Yeah.
Like I honestly, I naturally go to a melancholy place when I write lyrics, and Scott is naturally happier with his lyrics, and so we're kind of like Pink Floyd with like Roger Waters, and like our lyrics actually get to a really good balanced place. And so it's been a lot of fun working on this music project over the last 10 years with Scott. But
yeah, it's from the time that I first heard him sing, and I was like, well, he's got his music and I've got mine, you know. And then we didn't actually write a song together until 2013. And we're sitting on the beach in our cabin talking about a friend who'd just gone through a really rough time. Friend who was on the show, his best friend had just killed himself. He was $200,000 in debt. Now he's making like $200,000 or $300,000 a year, and he doesn't have a penny to show for it. And he's just coming under all this stuff. And we end up, Ian's like, dude, and he just sings this line to a song, and I instantly find a guitar part for it. And then I start kind of supplementing my lines into the song. We wrote a song. You know,
we started like
we'd been friends for like
1,
5 years, and we'd never actually written a song together. We'd sang a few songs together, but we'd never actually written one. And yeah, we started writing it at midnight, and by 3 or 4 a.m. we had a song.
I love it.
And then we started performing it for people, and everybody else loved it. And we're like, neither of us saw this coming, you know? So now it's been, you know, it's been like 5 years since that point, and we've merged these two. Like, my lifestyle is like this kind of musician, MMA fighter, Renaissance man, and his lifestyle is like this, you know, humanitarian, you know, educated psychologist, writer, you know, warrior poet kind of persona. And we put the two together, and we start writing these songs that neither of us could have ever written by ourselves.
So who wrote this Christmas song?
Who wants to claim responsibility?
Yeah.
So
like, neither one of us.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's out on YouTube. So I wrote this one. This was in response to, I think it's Soft 100 FM here in Salt Lake. They started playing Christmas music in November one year, and I don't like just complaining about issues. So this is my solution. So I was like, well, if you don't like the Christmas music, why don't you write one you like?
When it was almost in protest, it's like,
it's
like they're corporate America is using Christmas as a way to make money.
Yeah.
You know,
kind of like Valentine's Day and Hallmark.
It's sickening. It's like, come on, we all want Christmas, but it doesn't mean that you get to start like playing the Christmas songs when Thanksgiving hasn't even happened yet, and you're just trying to get everybody on board to spend their money.
Yeah, I hate it. That's the whole reason I don't like Christmas. It's the Black Friday. It's all the stuff that
the commercialization.
I like the holidays. I used to enjoy it. Now I can't stand it. It drives me insane.
Well, yeah, Black Friday was the example I was going to use, because Black Friday now starts on like Wednesday.
They keep pushing it forward.
The week after, and then it's Cyber Monday, and it's like, what are we doing? We took something that was this cool, unique thing. Like back in the day, I used to work retail, and so I would unload trucks and stuff, work in the back room. But that morning was always like the most exciting morning, right? There's this energy around it and really cool. And even though we had to be there at 4 a.m,
everybody's tearing through fear through the French army, just tearing through all the retail and leaving it in piles.
Yeah, and it's all hands on deck. Everybody in the store. And it was so cool. It was this really unique thing. And then stores started opening the night before and started opening.
Well, they did that to avoid the deaths that happen over a TV.
Yeah. Right. And so, the whole thing just got screwed up by corporate life, like instead of just making your billion in one day, now you get $500 million on each day instead of just doing it all in one.
Yeah.
And it sucks because people keep going for it and doing it. But,
so didn't a friend like Ian, wasn't there like a lady or a lady friend in your life who was like, you ought to write a song about this? Like, weren't you kind of commissioned to write this song? Or did she just kind of challenge you?
Maybe I had just been complaining about it, and maybe a friend put me in the right direction. Like, well, if you don't like it, then make a song.
Say something about it.
I know I had one line out of the song, accepting penitential cookie offerings. That's from Rachel Cutler.
Shout out, Rachel.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
of the Cutlers, Cutler cookies are really famous up in Davis County. I don't know if it's the same Cutlers.
No, I don't think so.
But it's an awesome parallel.
Yeah, that is. That's a great connection.
Yeah, delicious connection.
It's a great connection.
Do you want to go ahead and play it real quick, Ryan?
Sure. Yeah, I think this is the first time we've actually played this live while we're doing this.
Well, and the thing is they haven't even heard the finished. I worked on this last night, and I didn't have headphones, so I mixed this down with my computer speakers. So there might be a little bit of changes later on, but this
isn't the final edit.
This isn't the final edit, and it's mono actually right now, so you won't hear the stereo field. But we will.
It could be a rap song. We don't know. We're gonna listen to it.
There we go.
Yeah,
I got right on board with this song. As soon as. The first time I heard it, I thought this was genius. And what it does is it villainizes Santa Claus.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So. Well, yeah, there is the new Flava Flav part you added in the middle, but outside of that, it should be as you know it. So anyway, here we go. We'll give it a shot.
How did a man of flesh and blood, a man like you and I named Kringle, become a saint? Indeed, a jolly old saint. And how did a saint, with corporate sponsorship from Coca-Cola, become who we know as Santa Claus?
He sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. But I question your propriety. When could Santa really see me? In the bathroom, in the shower, Santa, I need my privacy. Where is Mrs. Claus in all this? Does she like you spying on kids, or is she shivering and cold up in the North Pole? Taking Christmas back from Santa Claus. Stop stealing our cookies with your dirty mitten paws, and let the Yule log burn bright, because tonight we're taking Christmas back from Santa. How did you become the police of little kids' morality? They write their humble little lists. The naughty ones don't get the gifts. Where did all the elves come from? You're not a saint, you're more like Sauron, Santa the Red, watching with his evil eye. Bet your cholesterol's really high. Accepting penitential cookie offerings, putting lumps of coal in kids' stockings. You can visit millions in one night but I ain't scared to fight. Oh, taking Christmas back from Santa Claus. Stop stealing our cookies with your dirty mitten paws and let the Yule log burn bright. 'Cause tonight, taking Christmas back from Santa. We're taking Christmas back, Santa.
I love the creepy voice at the end.
I'm so glad you left that in.
And it's great. We just went from having like this serious discussion and playing this deeply satirical song.
I love it.
That's all right. You know, we like to show the range here.
Well, and the cool part is that was, I mean, we recorded that in this podcasting studio as just kind of a proof of concept kind of thing, and it was fun to actually do.
Right.
So thanks for coming in and doing that and making the time to make it happen. So it's kind of fun.
No, it was cool. Like we started playing some other Christmas songs that we wrote a Santa Daddy.
Yeah, that was a funny one.
And then ugliest sweater in the room for ugly sweater parties.
Yep.
But we want to write a song that has to do with what Christmas is all like, spirit of Christmas. And that I don't, I'm kind of Christmas agnostic.
Yeah.
But what I do love about it is seeing my people and my friends, my family, and having that.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. But I believe in that all year long. And I don't like focus all of it in Christmas and then become an a-hole the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Like I'm focused on trying to have that spirit all year. And so that's my only beef with Christmas, honestly, is that some people, it seems like they make a choice to be different during Christmas. And so that's kind of the concept song that we want to write, which has to do with just
100% my beef on Christmas is the bell ringers. Can't stand them. The Salvation Army.
Mike's
oh,
just
yeah.
anti-charity.
That bell is the sound.
It's like,
The bell is the sound of them asking you to like, I don't know, to sterilize your white privilege card.
Well, I will say though, I mean, I've seen those guys around a lot. You know, they stand them out front of all the grocery stores and stuff like that. And I've never seen so many as in the last couple of years that stand around on their cell phone or whatever. Like they're not even by the little.
There was one dude last time
standing off to the side, looking at their phone, ringing their bell. You know, there's going to be the Bell app next year.
Just have the button.
Yeah, the whole thing is a mess. I mean, it's sort of lost its purpose. Even know, I mean, the people aren't really there to do anything, but those are the only bodies that can get to stand there.
Well,
right.
I'll tell you a quick Christmas story that happened to me. That this is. For me, this is what brings like the hopeful side back into the Christmas. So I have a friend who every year he gives all his friends the same gift.
Yeah.
He gives them $20, but he says, you only have my permission to spend this $20 on like something like a significant story,
something meaningful,
like on something that will lead to a meaningful story that you can come back and tell me about.
Yeah.
And I really took his offering to heart. I was like, whoa, okay, this $20 cash is going to stay in my wallet. It's not getting deposited. It's not going to get, it's going to be there as a reminder that I've got to use it for something significant. Well, this was last year. So I hung on to it all year. And it wasn't until just a few weeks ago that I was, I had just left. I can't remember. I might have even left your house.
I ran out of gas and had to put some.
No, I was freaking hungry and I needed to get a bite to eat real quick. And it's like midnight. And so I go to the In-N-Out Burger and I'm in line and I can't remember why, but I was feeling frustrated about something. And then all of a sudden I pull up to pay for my burger that I just ordered. And he's like, hey, the car in front of you just paid for your meal. And I was like, that never, ever happens to me.
Yeah.
Like one of those moments where the universe just like, here's like some good karma in exchange for all the good things that you've done. That never, ever happens to me. As far as I know, like karma doesn't exist because
I know it exists.
It seems like it never comes back, right?
It's a professional wrestler and he'll kick your ass if you're not careful.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just like, shoot, like I don't just accept, right? Or I'm like, crap. So what I tell the attendant, I'm like, okay, has the car behind me, have they ordered yet? And the attendant's like, yeah, and they got 3 burgers. And I was like, okay, cool. I'd like to pay for theirs. I was like, I'm not just going to drive away from here with a free burger.
Yeah.
You know, so I used the $20 and I paid for their burgers. And I told them, I was like, make sure I'm gone before you tell them that I paid for their meal, because I don't want them to like contact me.
Down, yeah.
I don't want them to know who it was. I was like, I want this to be as like double blind of a karma experiment as it can possibly be, you know.
Little do you know, like 8 people got free meals.
Well, in my mind, I was like, what if that played out where people just keep paying it forward and paying it forward? And what it would be is that only like the last one got a free meal. Or I was hoping maybe I would find some story on the news like a week later.
400 people fed.
Like it got passed down like 100 times until the final recipient was like some single mom on the run or something like that. But I don't know. But for me, it was just like, whoa.
Cool experience.
Somebody did something nice for me. And I was like, there's no way I'm just going to walk away the beneficiary of this. Like, but I really was the beneficiary in my heart. Yeah. Right. Because I feel like they got all the bonus points and I got all the bonus points because it really did melt my heart. And then it immediately made me want to pass it forward to someone else.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Christmas,
right.
There's a place up in, well, it's where I used to live up on Antelope, up in
Syracuse area.
Syracuse area. There's a coffee shop up there. I'm spacing out on the name. It's been a few years since I've been there, but their whole thing is everybody there. I mean, they do this kind of thing where they, you know, the car in front of you will pay. They do that kind of thing a lot. But the reason they do it is the people that work there are so insanely cool and so insanely polite and upbeat and everything that like your whole day is made better by just going to this coffee shop. And it inspires you to do good things. And so they keep up, you know, that kind of thing going almost all the time. And it's, you know, strictly due to the good people that they have there. And so, I mean, it's always a great experience. And while you guys finish talking for a minute, I'll pull up.
Look it up so we can give them credit.
Yeah, we had a guy working for us named Lincoln. Good dude. He had a bunch of kids and
Colin
Lincoln. Sorry.
Well, he has a really long native last name, but for all intents and purposes, everyone calls him Colin.
Yeah.
Colin Lincoln.
Yeah. So anyway, he's working for us. He gets paid, and he wants to take his family out to a good bite to eat. So he goes to a restaurant, which is expensive in Nome. And he's got 5 or 6 kids.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not cheap just to get the food up there.
So he orders a pizza, orders all the stops, and this guy in work clothes. Everybody wears work clothes. It doesn't matter what your profession is. Everybody wears Carhartts up there. So this guy stops by his table and just says, "Hey, how's it going?" And he says, "Good." He's looking up at a stranger. And the guy says, "You got a full quiver, don't you?" You know, referring to all his kids.
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, yeah, here we are." And you can just see the love. I mean, Colin's a good dude. He's good. He's a great dad. He loves his kids. And you just feel the love in families like that. And he doesn't have enough money to be buying that meal.
Yeah.
Right. Like he doesn't make enough from me to spend $100 on that meal. But so they finish their meal, they go to the counter, and that guy that had stopped by his table, he paid for the meal. And it's probably so cool. $120, $130, like 3 pizzas and some sushi rolls. It costs a lot up in Nome. So this guy just out of the goodness of his heart just stopped by, you know, saw the situation and said, "Hey, I'm just going to do somebody a solid."
I love stories like that. That's what it's all about right there. You know, that's what the Christmas spirit should be, instead of the whole commercialism and the, Black Friday
and
crap.
The thing is, that happened in August. And that's like, for me, that was such a powerful story. And that's why I wanted to share it, is that all of a sudden it just undid all the rules about giving for me.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't need permission. You don't have to have timing. You don't have to have permission. You don't need to like ask. Like if you're going to do something nice for somebody and you're coming from a good place, you do it. Yeah. You just do it. And then if you can like look for those opportunities, that's the upper level. That's like master's level stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So that was an awesome, story that he told us. It was great.
Yeah. Really cool. So the name of that place, just so that I can give them their little free plug, is they're called the Daily Rise. They're up on Antelope Drive in Syracuse, Utah, or it might be Layton or Clearfield or one of the little cities right around there. But they're amazing. Go there for your happy times, and they'll make you feel good. They're awesome.
The Daily Rise?
Yep, Daily Rise. Cool, they're just, I think, a local shop. They do their own roasting and all this stuff. But, I mean, the place is run, for lack of a better term, by, like, hippies. You know?
Love it.
They're the kindest, most friendly people, and they seem so genuinely interested in whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. Except for the one dude. They have one guy there that was a guy from Moscow. and still really friendly. But I made the mistake. I don't have a lot of Russian stories, but I told the guy I have a friend in St. Petersburg. I was like, oh yeah, no, I got a buddy in St. Petersburg. That's really cool. You're from Russia. It's like St. Petersburg is not Russia. It's Europe. I was like, oh. So even my one story, he kind of crapped on it.
That's funny.
But outside of that, every experience at Daily Rise is awesome. I would go check them out.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Where can people find you guys at?
So we got fosterbrothersmusic.com,
Okay.
fosterbrothersmusic.com.
And they'll be able to find that song.
And also
shortly.
at Instagram, Foster Brothers Music.
Okay.
And then you can find Ian at The Real Ian Foster.
I love it that it's the
Instagram.
real Ian Foster. You call his phone and that's the voicemail. You've reached the real Ian Foster.
And I was doing that before Trump was doing that. That's where you got that from.
Good
You guys are
And then
pretty
Scott, his is Scott Foster Rocks.
Okay.
No, Scott Foster Rock.
Oh, rocks, no rocks.
Rock.
Rock.
He
Yeah,
rocks,
Scott
rocks
Foster
also,
rock.
But he also rocks.
So cool. Well, that's awesome. And as usual, everybody knows you can catch our show, eggscast.com. You can find it at iTunes, Google Play, any old place where pods are sold. Outside of that, Mike, anything else?
I think we're good to go.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks so much for coming, doing the show. We really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
you
us.
and making the time. It was awesome.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Boom.